So you need to world build some sort of famous person or a celebrity or a historical person in your world. You need to world build this person, yet you don't want obnoxious character that is taking away spotlight from whatever else. The players, the protagonist, the story, whatever. And you wonder how to do that, because how does a famous, powerful person not take away spotlight after all? Well, here's a good trick to achieve exactly perfect exposition for famous people in your world building. You think to yourself what made people that you were interested in interesting to you when you hear about them at random. Where you hear about a famous scientist or a famous singer that you like, or a famous musician of some kind, or a famous person from history that did something incredible and unusual, and that one person that could eat so much and so many dangerous things, and yet nothing would happen to him. He would just eat more, or those sort of things. You remember why people you heard about and that stuck to you from history. In what context have you heard about them, so as to achieve that impression that their relevance to you was what got them in your perception, in your first impression, in a positive way, better than because they were a person that could do this or do that. It's a small difference, but you being interested because it was told in an interesting manner, because it was an interesting thing, because it was a relevant thing, because you feel you learned something that you wanted to learn. Like you said, I now know that humans can do this. I didn't think they could. And yet that guy exists. Or interesting, I didn't think a person easily rises through ranks in such a fashion, but there we go. Or I didn't know that that was the most powerful pirate of all time. Interesting. Especially having bigger fleet than most countries at most times in history. Such things. You want something that makes the player, the user, feel gratified for getting another part for themselves that they can use. That's how you get to introduce very famous, very powerful, very unique people in your world building. Yet you de-emphasize somewhat the otherwise, the text that makes the spot for them. You emphasize the part that you feel that helps the player feel rewarded for hearing about it, whilst you sort of glance over easily about how actually, powerful, relevant, still alive, etc. the person is. You don't need that. It's enough to mention it just in the casual manner around the whole thing, because that's the idea. If you try to emphasize, advertise the person, as the power, as the important, as the beautiful, as the whatever, that's when players, listeners, readers feel like you're taking away from something else, someone else. Interestingly enough, it feels almost like people have a limited amount of who they care for at a certain moment from people they don't know or care about. And then you sort of want them to not be distracted, because otherwise they'll be either annoyed because you're trying to make them care for the ones they care about less and they don't want to move their position, or they move their position to your disadvantage because you wanted them to keep their position. And they wanted to keep their position, but didn't notice, and now they moved position accidentally. So, as such, you want to have them indeed not be pressured to move their position of whose perspective they are following. Rather, you want them to feel rewarded for the perspective they are following, while still absorbing additional information about other individuals as they come. So this is the trick to do that. And indeed, once you do it in that manner, then you can build on it when they arrive in front of the person or closer to the plot, because then they are pre-introduced. So now it's easier to not emphasize how cool and powerful this was, because they already heard about it. So it's easy to sort of glance over that part to introduce more human side of the person in question, shall we say, to get more to know them, because now you want them to switch focus and territory of, thinking about exploration, who they have in their mind at the moment. And this is how, indeed, that's the trick. So, adventure, if you thought this was useful or unique, maybe you can spare me a click and I could see you here next, or even perhaps every week, because every week I have more such things for you. I make them myself. I'm M, and welcome to dMTable. See you next time.